Hello, am I audible? I think I am. Okay, so welcome everyone. This is Aryan, and so this event is basically a collaboration between Unicode and Synapse, and uh, I think all of us sort of know about what the Google Summer of Code event is, but it's very confusing and daunting for beginners to sort of get into it and understand what it is and how to go about it. And this is an effort from our side to help out our juniors, basically the community around us, to sort of help you all get started and get up and running with it. Since the event, I mean, Google Summer of Code typically takes place in the first half of every year, so this is a good time for everybody to sort of start, preparing and really get started with it. So which is why we wanted to hold this as soon as possible, especially given that Hacktoberfest is going on. So I think we'll just get into it. We are sort of 15 minutes off, but I think that's fine. Today's speakers are Amogh Desai and Jugal Mistry. So Amogh is in the third year. He's in the same year as I am. He's a diploma student, and this year he was a Google Summer of Code developer at OpenAstronomy. Jugal Mistry is in the fourth year, and he was a developer at the Checker framework. And today, both of them are going to be talking about how to get started with it, how to actually crack the GSoC program. In fact, even some other programs, some other open source programs. So that's what we're going to be getting into today. We also have a session tomorrow with two more people, Soham Parik and Rahul Singh. Soham again is from our college, a fourth year student. Rahul isn't from our college, but he has also been a developer at Open Astronomy. So they'll be talking about different things tomorrow. So if you enjoy today, if you're really able to, get some insight or something, make sure that you join in tomorrow as well. I think that's about it. Let's get started. 6:13, 6:14. So yeah, over to Amogh.
Hi everybody. I hope you all have been having a good day. So today, Jugal and I will be talking about Open Source 101. So we have a kind of a presentation for you all, and we'll have a question answer session at the end after we are done with our presentation. But we want to make this as interactive as possible. I understand everyone wouldn't be comfortable, turning on the mic, so you all could just raise your hands. Everyone knows how to do that in MS Teams. Okay, so I'll just get started with the presentation, and I'll just share my screen just in a second. Okay, so I guess I'm sharing my screen now. Is it visible to you all? Aryan, can you confirm if my screen is visible?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, so firstly, I want to know how many of you guys actually know what is open source, or have been familiar with open source, have contributed beforehand or anything. How many of you all could anyone just raise their hands or just type something in the comment box probably? Okay. 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 So not many of you all. Okay. 4, 5. Okay, that is great. Okay, thank you so much. So, well, we have a fairly, new crowd. So, okay, we'll just, start right from the beginning. Okay, so before we get into what is open source, let us first understand the history of open source, of where open source actually came from. So, well, there's a story associated with this, like how open source came into being. So, I'll just tell you that in short. In the 1970s, there was this AI and ML lab at MIT, which had a broken printer. And well, this printer, every time you gave it a print command, there was always paper that was jamming or some or the other issues. So now there was this one staff scientist there called Richard Stallman. Now many of you all may have heard about him, but well, so Richard Stallman, what he basically did is that he changed the code of the printer such that every time there was a paper jam issue, the message a message would go to all of the staff scientists at that research lab that there's a paper jamming issue, please come and fix it. And this actually worked really well to solve some of the issues. But after a while, now MIT decided to change the printer because although there was this fix, it was not really something that was very workable. So MIT thought of putting in a new printer there instead of the old printer. And now Richard Stallman asked MIT to give him access to the source code of the new printer so that he could put in the same functionality and put in the same fix, so that if there was some issue down the line, it was already patched. Now MIT actually refused to do so, and even the printer company who actually manufactured the printer company said that they wouldn't give access to the source code. And there was a very heated discussion between Richard Stallman and MIT, and arguments and stuff. And Richard Stallman eventually ended up leaving MIT just because of a paper jamming issue and not getting access to the source code. And what he did over the course of the next few years was create the first open source operating system called GNU, which is represented by the bull logo here on the bottom right corner. So he can actually be called the father of open source. Like, yes, there were projects before that, which was like ARPANET, which was like the predecessor to the internet, that was also partially open source. But the atmosphere at that time was something like that, because of the rise of many big companies such as Microsoft and other such companies, no one really preferred open source technologies. So Richard Stallman pioneered the open source technology revolution. And all the open source technologies that we use today are partly because of the initiative that he took. So today we have over 180,000 open source projects that are used in our day-to-day lives or in some big applications, which we may not be even aware of. Okay, and there are 4.4 crore GitHub repositories in total as of 2019. Now that is a really huge number, coming from just one single project in the early 1980s to 4.4 crore GitHub repositories in 30 years is a big leap for all of us. So, well, most of the technologies that we use today are based on open source projects. So the Android operating system is essentially an open source project. The Linux operating system is an open source project. The Chromium web browser, not Google Chrome essentially, but the platform on which Google Chrome is built, which is actually called Chromium, that is also an open source technology. Along with that, you have Mozilla Firefox, you have Wikipedia, which is run by its parent company Wikimedia, which is also an open source organization. We have VLC Media Player, we have the Python programming language, which is open source, we have PHP, which is open source. So we can see that without us even knowing, like some of y'all may know this, but we are completely surrounded by open source technologies that are in use today in most of our applications. So now this begs the question, what is open source? So open source basically is a type of software that is developed by an individual or a group of people that is that is given a license such that the owner or the owners of the source code allow anyone to use and modify and distribute the software for any purpose that they see fit. So that is the basic of what open source is. Now the beautiful part of this, according to me, is that anyone like anyone from around the world can come together. Like many people, skilled people, passionate people can come from around the world and work together on an open source project. which is actually going to benefit the community and the society in general. And according to me, that is the beauty of open source. So now y'all may want to ask me, why should you be contributing to open source? So, well, as I said earlier, open source technology is something, which is in which you work with different people from all around the world. Okay, you get to interact and you get to talk with people from various fields, understand their ideas, and there is a whole amalgamation of thought processes, ideas, and a lot of things which help yourself, like you, to grow as a programmer, as a developer, or just as a human being actually. And this is just for the personal part. And what is the other reason that you should contribute to open source? So open source software is basically free of charge. Okay, anyone can use it, anyone can modify it, or you can change it to do something else, or use it in your source code to enhance some of your features. So contributing to open source is actually benefiting everyone, all developers, programmers, everyone who is actually writing code. And it is also helping the society in some research task, or in just day-to-day things. So I feel that that is the main reason that you should probably contribute to open source. So now, like many of us, we may think that open source projects such as Android or Python, or for that instance the Chromium web browser, they are such mature developed projects. How do we start, how do we contribute to them? And they are very fixed in their approach, that okay, so Chromium web browser is a web browser. So what is the scope, or what are the project domains in open source? So let me tell you that the scope or the project domains in open source is endless. Okay, so I personally worked on my GSoC or Google Summer of Code project this year. It was with OpenAstronomy, so obviously it was based on astrophysics and astronomy. You could also, if you are interested in bioinformatics, or computational biology, there is the Open Bioinformatics Foundation. If you're interested in developing some code for the hardware, system level code, then you have Arduino. If you're interested in machine learning, TensorFlow. If you're interested in DJ software, or working on something of that sort, then you have the Mix platform, which is an open source DJ software. If you want to work on geospatial information, or some satellite information, or anything that is related to Earth, then you have the OSGeo organization. You have the Django organization, like all of you all know, which is actually an extension, which is a framework of Python, which is used for web development. If you're into gaming, then you have the Godot game engine. And if you're into developing operating systems, then you have Debian. You have a lot of options available for project domains or organizations that are available for contributing to open source software. So I would definitely recommend each one of you all to go ahead and contribute to any of them that you like, because as I said earlier, that there are 180,000 projects and 4.4 crore GitHub repositories. So there's a lot of scope and a lot of variety when it comes to what you want to contribute to. So now I personally started my open source journey last year with Hack Oktoberfest. And I had the same thing, that I do not have a lot of knowledge of these big project repositories, which may span anywhere from 5,000 to 50,000 or more lines of code. So how should I start, and what should I basically be doing? So, well, let me tell you first. So, whatever you're feeling is actually something called the imposter syndrome. So, what is the imposter syndrome? The imposter syndrome, maybe most of you all know this, it makes you feel you are not good enough to do something, or that what other people are doing, or other contributors are contributing to the code base, it is much more substantial than what you are doing, which makes you essentially scared and holds you back from contributing. But let me tell you this: open source repositories or open source organizations really value each and every small contribution that you can give. It does not really matter whether you are from the, if web development, if app development, if even graphics designing works for the matter. They need help with documentation. So every small contribution to an open source project really helps and is needed and required by the open source organization. So now, what are the things that you really need to start contributing? So firstly, you need willingness. And why do I say that? Essentially is because, well, once you have the willingness to just go through with it, half of your job is already done there. Okay, because if you're not scared, and if you know that yes, I will be able to contribute and I will be contributing to this open source project or these open source projects, you will definitely be 50% of the way there. Next, you need a laptop or a PC, internet connection, and basic Git and GitHub skills. So, well, I have attached some resources at the end for Git and GitHub skills, and I'll just be going through some basic commands or basic operations in Git and GitHub very soon. So, well, you just need these 4 basic things, and you can definitely contribute to these projects no matter what your skill set is. No, now, so many of y'all may ask, how do I start out? So, like, how do I start contributing? So, well, open source projects are basically, hosted on one of these 4 sites, with the exception of some big ones. We have GitHub, which is the most popular one. We have GitLab, we have Atlassian Bitbucket, and we have SourceForge. So GitHub is the most popular one here. And then comes GitLab and all the rest. So it is basically advisable to start with GitHub, because you have a lot of variety and a lot of options there, but you're not restricted to just contribute to GitHub. If you find some good projects on GitLab or any of the other uh, websites or any of the other platforms, then you can go and contribute there. So, well, I have created 10 steps for how do you can start out. And so firstly, you need to start your PC or laptop. Secondly, you need to install Git on your PC and create a GitHub account. So I'm just going to go through the steps that are required for GitHub basically. So you install Git on your PC and create a GitHub account. Next, you try to find a project that interests you. So this is a very important step here, because, well, if you find a project that interests you, then you'll actually start contributing more and more towards that initiative, because it is actually something that you believe in. But if you just contribute for the sake of it, it is not going to yield a lot of contributions or a lot of fruit out of it, basically because open source contributions, like, there are so many people that are doing open source contributions, so you necessarily do not get the recognition, nor do you really get a lot of perks attached to just contributing to an open source project. But if you are really gripped by an open source project, then it will definitely keep you contributing, because you feel like you get a sense of ownership of that project. Like, you're working on your own personal project, not on someone else's project. So finding a project is very important. As I said earlier, we have a lot of domains for open source projects. Try to find a domain that interests you, and then try to go through some of the projects related to that domain, and just start contributing right away. Okay, so now nextly, you should be forking and cloning the the repository. So what does this mean? A fork, okay, so let us assume let us just have 3 entities here. One is the main repository, one is the repository on your GitHub account, and one is your local copy of that project or your repository. So a fork essentially copies the code from the main repository to the local to the repository on your GitHub account. Okay, so it essentially just creates a copy on your GitHub account of the main project. And now when you clone the project, the the copy that you have saved on your GitHub account or the main repository, it is directly downloaded to your PC or your laptop, so that you can start contributing or start making changes. So now so you should be forking and cloning, in my opinion, or you could just directly clone the project as well. So next you should go through the issues of the repository. So every GitHub project has a issues tab in it. So, well, when you go to these issues tab, you find a lot of the problems that in the repositories, no matter how big or small the repositories are. Rather, the bigger the repository, the more issues or more problems it will have. So just try to go through the issues repository, issues panel, and try to find whatever issues that you are interested, or whatever problems you are interested in solving, and try to look for a good first issue at the beginning. The reason for this is that good first issues are specifically assigned that good first issue label, so that any new contributor, no matter how experienced he may be with the technology, may just start with that first, so that he gets a hang of how things work in the repository, and how what are the contribution guidelines and coding guidelines. Every repository has their own set of contributing and coding guidelines, which you can find in the GitHub repository as well. So just look for a good first issue first and try to solve that. Next, select your desired issue, and it can be as simple as documentation fix. Yes, definitely. So it can be a documentation fix as a good first issue, but then I recommend personally to solving big issues or bigger problems, not just trying to solve all the good first issues, because they're just specifically meant to be solved once, so that you get a hang of the repository. Next, you make the changes, commit the changes, push the changes to your local repository. Okay, so now you have a copy of the project on your PC or your local laptop. Then you make the changes according to the issue that you want to fix. You make it in your local you make the changes in your local PC or your laptop, and then you essentially commit the changes. So committing the changes means that you are bringing your repository to a you're just saying that, okay, I have made these changes, and you're actually updating your local repository to the updated code. So that is what committing is, and you have to put a commit message with that as well. Now nextly, you can next, once you have committed the changes, you have to stage the changes, which is the intermediate part, and then you have to push the changes. Pushing the changes means that whatever changes that you have on your local repository are to be pushed, or are to be reflected in the on the on the GitHub repository on your local, on your account, or on the main GitHub repository. So you push the changes to your local repository, or to the main repository. That is fine, it depends on the access that you have. And then you can create your first PR. Now once you've pushed the changes, your local repository will be ahead of the main repository by a few commits, which is actually the changes that you have made to the code. And so now you can create your first PR or your pull request. So a pull request is essentially saying that I have made these changes in the code. Okay, before merging them into the main code base, let us just discuss the changes and see if everything is still working fine or not. And you create your PR, and then you discuss the changes, and then your PR gets merged. And trust me on this, I remember my first PR that got merged. I don't remember the exact topic of the PR, but I remember that my first PR got merged in Hack Oktoberfest last year. And that was a super happy moment for me, because you really feel that you have contributed to something meaningful, and you are just working on a real world project that will be used by so many people around the world. And then the last step is obviously, while you're alive, if you're glued to that project, step 10 will be really applicable to you. So while you're alive, repeat steps 3 to 9. So I guess that is the basics of how you should be starting out contributing to any GitHub repository or any open source project. Okay, so now open source programs. As I said earlier, just contributing to an open source project does not give you a lot of perks or a lot of recognition, because there are a lot of people who are already contributing to these open source projects. Okay, they are maintainers, there are other contributors, and there are a lot of newbies as you and me as well. So what are open source programs? So open source programs are almost all of them are like 3 month programs, or Hacktoberfest is 1 month program, which in which you are given a certain number of tasks, or a project, or a real world project rather, to work on. And you're given 9 to 12 weeks, which depends from program to program, in which you get an opportunity to contribute to that project, or work on the project that you're interested in. So these open source programs are really, in my opinion, I was a part of GSoC last year, and I'm a mentor at Outreachy currently. So in my opinion, they provide a lot of opportunities to learn and interact with a lot of people. So for my Google Summer of Code project, my project was essentially based on X-ray astronomy. I'm personally interested in astronomy, to be honest, but I never knew anything about astronomy or X-ray astronomy or anything for that matter. But my mentor, who was Matteo Bacchetti, he was a astronomer from Italy. So you know talking to him, he shared his experiences, and he gave me a brief of about what what is the basic astronomy, how does this project essentially work, and all of that, and which helped me gain a lot of insight into X-ray astronomy as well. And along with that, you get a chance to interact with a lot of people from around the world. So my organization was Open Astronomy, and tomorrow a speaker who will be talking about his project, essentially Rahul Singh, he was also part of Open Astronomy, and I met him through Google Summer of Code, because we were in the same organization essentially. So well, definitely I would say that you should definitely apply to open source programs if you do get a chance. So we have Google Summer of Code, we have the Outreachy program. So Google Summer of Code happens once a year, uh, in the summer, because it's summer of course, in summer. Then the Outreachy program happens twice a year, but for us in India, because we are in the northern hemisphere, it's also in summer. And Outreachy program is a good initiative started by the Outreachy organization to help, or support underprivileged you know people in who have started to learn to code, or who want to contribute to open source organization. So they basically focus on minorities, and if you do face any discrimination in your country or in your region, then Outreachy is actually something that is meant for you. So it is a very good learning experience in itself. Then we have the MLH fellowship, which is just started this year by GitHub. So the MLH fellowship is thrice a year, once in summer. There is one that is going on right now, and there will be another one that will start in January. So that is also very amazing program started by GitHub. Then we have the Hack Oktoberfest that is already going on right now, and this year they have slightly changed the rules, but nevertheless, anyone who wants to get started with open source contributions or open source technologies should definitely start contributing with Hacktoberfest, because around this time there's a lot of contributors and developers who are already contributing to various repositories, as well as you get a lot of free swag such as t-shirts and stickers, and for just making 4 pull requests, which is not really a lot. So try your best to take part in the Hacktoberfest, and the registrations are actually open till the 31st of December. 31st of October. I'm so sorry, 31st of October. So it really doesn't matter if you register today or in the next week, but please do register for that. And then we have the Girl Script Summer of Code, which is also a fairly new event. And it is organized by the Girl Script Foundation India. It is also a summer of code, so it occurs every summer. Then we have certain winter of codes as well. So a winter of code program is actually 1.5 month long program that happens every year in December and January, so that to prepare the students for the summer of code program. So the format remains the same, just the duration will be smaller, and the projects that you will be working for will be not that huge or big projects. They'll be just 1 month projects. So we have DAWOC. Then we have, which is I forgot the full form. I'm so sorry, but I can give you the links later on. Then we have a Winter of Code at IIT Kharagpur as well. So you all could contribute, or you all could enroll yourself in those programs as well, because they really help giving a starting point for the summer of code programs, and are really very prestigious as well. So now. I'll just give you a brief about Hacktoberfest. So Hacktoberfest, as I said, it occurs every month in October, and its main objective is to just support open source and have fun and earn a limited edition T-shirt. Obviously, it is not just about getting the swag, but it is about supporting open source. So you have to create four pull requests to any open source repository on GitHub, and it does not need to be code. It can be even documentation or spelling fix, and it is essentially recommended for beginners to open source. Now this year they have slightly changed the rules because of a lot of new contributors spamming the repositories with just a pull request for a comma or a full stop or a very basic change. So the rule this year says that if a code base, or if a repository has a Hacktoberfest label, as you can see in the image right here, if it has a Hacktoberfest label in its issues, or if the organization agrees to be a part of Hacktoberfest, then only you can contribute to that repository, and then your pull request will be recorded. Otherwise it will not be. So probably you could start with doing contributing to Hacktoberfest. There's a certain limitation this year, but I still feel there are a large number of repositories that have really put up the initiative to create special issues or tasks that for just Hacktoberfest. So yeah, please go ahead and contribute to that. Now Jugal will be continuing and talking to you all about Google Summer of Code in depth. Jugal, over to you.
So, am I audible?
Jugal, I guess you should be a bit louder, but otherwise you're good.
Is it okay now?
Yeah. You're pretty audible now. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. So we are actually getting to the main part of this event. So actually, what is Google Summer of Code? So Google Summer of Code starts in February and it will end around August. And the main objective of Google Summer of Code is, if there are ambitious projects or ambitious organizations like Mozilla, then they'll enroll in this Google Summer of Code, where Google will support the organizations, as well as Google will also support student developers to make contributions to the open source organization. So actually, the importance of Google Summer of Code is actually the tag of Google. Nothing beats it. And also you get a chance to work with organizations like Mozilla Foundation, or the Foundation, or there's Debian, there's Arduino, there's BeagleBoard. So many popular organizations participate in this event, and also you get to work on really awesome projects. Not to mention that the stipend is also very attractive, and it can be one of the reasons why you may like Google Summer of Code. So what are the actual phases of the Google Summer of Code are? Firstly, participating organizations are announced. Then these organizations have some tasks, and students complete these tasks. Students make proposals, and accepted proposals can begin coding period, and they receive the stipend. That is one hell of an amount. So yeah, we can go on the next slide. Okay, so this was the timeline that happened this year. Roughly the same timeline is followed, but there may be some changes, but that's not the problem here. So around January, organizations start applying, and on February 20 this year, organizations were announced along with their project ideas. So in between February and March, students can discuss what the project ideas are or how could I start contributing to their organization. In March, from March 16, the students start making proposals, and March 31st is the deadline for submitting a proposal. Now, April, the period between April and May is the period where the organizations decide whether you are apt for the project or not. And in this period, you can still contribute to the repository, and that will be actually very beneficial. After May 4th, results will be announced about which the selected proposals will be announced. And May 4th to May 31st, the whole of May will be a community bonding period where you interact with your mentors, you look at the code, you get to know how the people work in that organization, and a good chance to get started with the project. So June 1st to August 31st will be the actual coding period, where at the end of each month you'll have an evaluation, and if you pass that evaluation, you'll be able to continue for the next month. And after each successful evaluation, you'll receive a portion of the stipend. Now on September 8th, all of the projects that are successful in the end and pass all the evaluations are announced, where you get the final amount of the stipend, and a certificate is also issued to you. So this is the timeline that happened this year. Can you go to the next slide?
I've changed the slide.
Okay. Yeah. So okay. Yeah. So at first, all of this seems very daunting. Like many people rush in, many people have conversations with the mentors, and there'll be flooding of messages in the messages of the organizations. So how should we go about it? How should we try to get accepted in GSoC? So I'll break this down into some phases. So before the organizations are announced, Google has an archive of projects that have happened at each year. So now they'll have a 2020 archive, a 2019 archive. So to make sure what you'll be able to choose, you can go through the archive and see all the organizations and the projects. And these projects will be filtered accordingly. So if you want to work something on something related to Python, or something related to machine learning, or something related to app development or web development, you can appropriately search there, and the projects will be filtered and the organizations will also be filtered. So important thing is you'll have to select 3 organizations, just shortlist them and make sure that it matches your skill set, or the project that have been done are interesting to you. Also, this could be a good chance to have a look at the repository and what kind of code they write, and in general get an understanding of how they work initially. Okay, so this is the phase 1. You can go to the next. Okay, so after organizations are announced, on the main page you'll have to on the main page all the organizations will be announced along with the project ideas and the getting started guide. So if you choose an organization, they'll have a ready list of instructions on what you should do to get started with this year's Google Summer of Code, as well as a list of project ideas, potential project ideas that they'd want you to implement. So each organization will have a mailing list that is a chain of emails. They have conversation over emails, or they'll have channels like Slack, or they have Discord servers, or they have IIRC channels, chat channels, which you can use. So exactly what organizations require you to do is they have either a set of tasks that you need to complete, or they expect you to make pull requests. So pull request is essentially you writing some fix and then waiting for the people in the organization to approve those changes and then merge it into the repository. So the task can include the task that they have given, as well as pull requests or bug reports if they require. Also, they'll have a list of project ideas that they'd want you to implement this year. So have a look at it and select a project idea that is good for you, and also select a project idea that can give you a slight better edge over others, because if there are simpler project ideas, they'll usually be on the top and the more difficult ones will be in the bottom. So accordingly, you'll have to maintain a balance on what to choose. But if you have chosen interesting project idea, that will definitely help you in the long run. So after this, each organization has a set of mentors. There'll be around 2 to 3 mentors or 5 mentors per organization, and they'll be the first point of contact that you will come into with regards to contributing. So make sure you interact with the mentors, and when you interact with mentors, make sure that you ask questions that are explicitly not mentioned about. Like if they have written on how you should get started, like each and every step they've mentioned in detail, you should probably not ask them again, like what should I do, how should I start, because many students will come in, and it will make the life of mentors very irritating. So you should ask questions. You should ask good questions, and you should not ask questions that are already mentioned. Also, one common habit that people follow is lurking. So what essentially lurking is, they'll see an open issue on GitHub and they'll add a message there like, yes, I can contribute to this issue. But later they don't do anything, or they get stuck somewhere, or they don't come up with a tangible result. And this has happened a lot of times. So if you're sure you'll be able to solve the problem, then only go forward with it, and do not lurk. In short, do not put messages that are without any reason. That is an important point. These are after the organizations are announced. Can we go to the next slide? Okay. So after the organizations announced, around March 16, the Google Summer of Code website will accept registrations. So you will have to register, and in the registration phase, you'll have to provide some details like the college in which you study, some proof like your college ID card, and all of the relevant stuff. Along with that, you'll also be able to access the proposals tab, where you can create proposals, and you can share the proposals with the mentors. But this has to only be done through the Google Summer of Code website. So once you've selected a project idea, you have to create a rough solution that you can come up with, and mention that in the proposal, and elaborate on the points what you'll work on, how you'll make this work possible, uh, the approach, and also some possible bottlenecks or drawbacks of the approach that you are planning to overcome. So also organizations expect that you may not come up with such solid approaches, but you'll have to convince them that you'll be able to do the project. Okay, so every organization, you can submit proposals to at most 3 organizations, and in each organization you'll be able to submit draft proposals. So in draft proposals, you'll just create a Google Doc and share it with the mentors in the organizations through the Google Summer of Code website. The mentors will add some feedback, some comments, like which part of the proposal was clear, which part was not clear, which needs proper definition, or what needs to be focused on the proposal. So 2 draft proposals are allowed, and after the draft proposal, you'll have to submit a final proposal in PDF form. So 2 draft proposals for organizations, at the most 3 organizations, and one final proposal for each organization. So you can submit in 3 organizations, but a good rule that I followed is I shortlisted 3 organizations. I tried working on the tasks of 2 organizations which I thought were easy, and then one of the organization's tasks I was not able to complete. So I focused on just one organization and I wrote a proposal for that organization. So you can also write proposals for all 3 organizations, but it should be eminent that you focus your time on the easiest possible project that you can do to get enrolled in Google Summer of Code. Okay, so we can go to the next slide. Okay, so the parts of a good proposal. So as mentioned, these organizations have a getting started guide. This guide will cover almost all the points that you need. So you'll have to work on the task and make good progress on the task. Like the task that I was given was completing case studies on different libraries in Java. So I completed case study on 2 libraries in which I completed the task where I filed bug reports. I performed analysis of the project, and also some organizations require you to make pull requests and contributions. So make sure that you properly mention what you've worked on and you have good progress on these tasks or pull requests to prove that you will be able to work on their code. Next part of the proposal is selection of the project idea. Usually this part is the one that will mention the first in the proposal, and it varies according to the organization. So organization will also say what part you should include in the proposal. So selection of a good project idea along with the approach that you would follow. They don't expect a concrete approach from you because you've just started working on the repository, on the code, but they'll require that you have a clear idea of what the project idea is about and what you would choose to do, or what your approach would be. Also, not only you can not only select the project idea from their list, but also propose a new project idea that you think you'll be able to work on. And sometimes that is a good plus point for many proposals, because if you come up with a project idea that is not in the proposal, it will definitely fetch you brownie points. But again, this may happen that the idea that you've given that is not in the initial list of ideas may have been completed in the past projects. So make sure that you have looked on the past projects of the organization. and you don't propose the same idea. Also, the organization will require you to show some previous work that you've done apart from Google Summer of Code, like apart from the contributions that you've made to the repository. Like if you've worked somewhere, or you have experience in some language, or you have experience in some framework, or anything related to the project that you can prove. Or they'll also ask you to include your resume. So these are the parts of a good proposal. We can go to the next slide. Okay, so once you hit the deadline, you'll have to submit the proposal, the draft proposals with the comments need not be submitted, but you need to submit the final furnished proposal in the before the deadline. And if your proposal is selected, that is the chance of great profit. And then there will be the community bonding period. So in community bonding period, essentially what you'll get to do is you'll have a chance to interact with your mentors and get to know how the organization works, what practices they follow, and what work you could get started with. Also, this may be a good chance for many people to have a deep look at the code and the repository to make sure that you get to have every nook and cranny of the repository, and you get to frame a better approach that you previously mentioned in the proposal. Like if you've mentioned to do so and so things, you can refine those approach after looking at the repository and the code. Then June, July, August will be the 3 months of the coding period, where at the end of each month there will be an evaluation. So in evaluation, some organizations require you to create a document of what you've written. They either require you to create weekly meeting agendas or weekly talking points that you've worked on, and they'll have weekly meetings or whatever suits them, like weekly meetings or bi-weekly meetings. And you need to ensure that you note and document each and every step that you've performed, each and every part of code you've written, and every single part of the progress that you've made. So that will be the weekly report, or either they'll require a monthly report at the end, or some organizations require you to write blogs on your personal blog site. So that is all dependent on the organization, but make sure you make good progress in each month. And at the end of the month, there will be an evaluation period where you evaluate the mentors, like how the mentors have been helpful to you. Are they able to solve the doubts that you ask them, or are they available when you ask them, or the amount of times that you've had meetings with. So if the mentors are not interacting properly, you could submit your feedback there. But in most cases, in 99% of the cases, the mentors are always there to help you, and the rapport will always be good. So after you pass the evaluation after each month, you will receive a portion of the total stipend. So the breakup of the stipend this year was 30% in June, 30% in July, and the final 40% of the stipend in August, after you pass the evaluation. And after passing the final evaluation in August, you will receive the remaining 40% of the stipend, along with the certificate to prove that you've successfully completed your project in Google Summer of Code for the year. And that will be a good point on your resume or anything that you would like to do in your future. So yeah, we can go to the next slide. Okay, so my Google Summer of Code project was in Checker framework. And what Checker framework does is, Checker framework is a tool using which you can detect errors in Java before you were even running the program. So these include all kinds of errors like null pointer exceptions, or if the array index is out of bounds, or if there is some kind of locking in the thread and you are not able to solve the deadlocks in the thread, as well as string taints. So string taints is a bit more general term, but in string taints, you can think of something like an SQL injection attack. Like if you're directly getting string from input box, the checker will tell you that don't do this, perform some validation on it. Also, Checker framework has checkers for SI units to make sure that you use the correct unit, like you are using kilogram instead of gram, and you are using kilometers instead of meters, and not using the incorrect units. And there are many checkers, but unfortunately this may not be the best time to discuss all of them. So what my project was, what the Checker framework does is it actually passes the code, and after passing the code, it will store the result that each statement would probably get in its phase of execution, and then create a control flow graph. So the methodology that was currently being followed in parsing and storing the expressions was a little bit hacky. So I worked on improving that, enhancing the toolset, and making sure that properly control flow graphs are created to perform analysis and detect errors. Okay, so Amogh, you can cover the next part. Thanks. Amogh.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So as I said earlier, my Google Summer of Code project was with OpenAstronomy. And I was actually, OpenAstronomy is a main organization under which many sub-organizations can also, participate in GSoC. So you have many, like you have a Stingray, which was my organization, like a sub-organization, or the repository on which I was working on. You have SunPy, and many other such small organizations within OpenAstronomy. A similar approach can also be seen in the Python Software Foundation, where there are many sub-organizations working under the Python Software Foundation, or PSF. So anyway, so my project was basically called a lightning fast Stingray. So what Stingray essentially does is that it works on X-ray astronomy data that is coming from black holes and neutron stars. And what it does is basically it processes this data and converts it into, and provides tools for analysis of that data, and converts it into meaningful graphs. Now what happens is that the size of this data is often in hundreds of GBs or in some TBs. Now if I want to process some data, analyze it, I need the data to be in the RAM. But unfortunately we cannot fit 1 TB of data, or 100 GB of data in our RAM. Otherwise we need the RAM size to be increased that much. So now what my project basically was, that I had to first ensure that I had all the data, and then I had to chunk the data, and or divide it, and then process it sequentially. Initially we did it sequentially, that the data was processed sequentially, and then combining all the results and averaging. That was what the first part of a project was. But now doing this part by part analysis, the problem that occurs is that it takes a lot of time. So I'm sorry, am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. What essentially happens is that this takes a lot of time. So sometimes it can take a day or two to also process the data, and this is something that we really do not want. So what I did was that I parallelized all these operations so that the speed of execution, or the speed at which the operations were being executed was really really fast, and I got the compute time down to an hour or a two, which is a great difference from the initial time that was taken. Also, I analyzed the whole repository to find bottlenecks, memory bottlenecks or processing bottlenecks, and I fixed them as well. So basically, my project was basically on optimization of the library and parallelization, which is actually very, very, important, because if I am a scientist and if I have to wait one day for the results of some analysis, it is obviously going to, probably make me wait and lose a lot of time. Rather than that, if I can complete the same analysis work or processing in an hour or two, it will greatly help me speed up my research. And probably this is the thing that gave me the most satisfaction, not the stipend or anything, but basically the satisfaction that I was contributing to advanced research in some small or big field, which will in turn help all of us, in doing something good or better for the society. So we are done with the presentation. If any of you all have any questions, so we are up for answering your questions. We'll have a 10-minute, 15-minute Q&A round. So anyone who has any questions, please just shoot them.
Okay, I also hope that my video feed was not hiding the presentation. So if there was a problem in the presentation, make sure to let us know.
Yeah, and we'll forward the presentation to you all. That is not really an issue because we have made it on Google Slides, so it's pretty easy to share the presentation as well. So anyone who has a question, please raise your hand and just go on, ask us. That is absolutely fine.
Before we get to that, Amogh and Jugal, could you talk about Hacktoberfest as well? Because that's like a really good starting point, right?
Yeah.
So,
Okay. So, well, I actually had a slide for that. Okay, no worries. So Hacktoberfest is actually 1 month long program for newbies or new contributors to contribute to open source project repositories, or basically the open source community. So basically, what Hacktoberfest is that you have to make 4 pull requests. Essentially, just 4 pull requests to any repository or any project that you like. And if those pull requests are not marked as spam, you are given a free t-shirt and some stickers and stuff. So it is a very good starting point for contributing to open source, because everyone around you is contributing, and you get some goodies or swag or whatever. This year they slightly changed the rules in light of new contributors just making changes to documentation, and just adding a comma or full stop somewhere, which is not really a good way to start contributing, although you may be a newbie, but it's not really a good way to start contributing. So the rules have changed such that anyone who's a anyone who marks the repository as a part of the Hacktoberfest, or marks some issues in the repository as with the Hacktoberfest tag, uh, those are the only issues, or those are the only repositories that will be considered for those pull requests. Otherwise they will not be. So just make sure that this year you contribute to only the repository, at least for the Hacktoberfest. But after that you can definitely contribute to any repository. That is not really an issue. But for the Hacktoberfest, you contribute to a repository which has that Hacktoberfest tag to the issues. So that will be really yeah. So that is how it works. But still there are a lot of organizations. It's not or a lot of repositories and organizations that have put up that tag in their issues. So that is not really something to worry about. That you have less projects or less tasks to work upon this year. So that is what basically Hacktoberfest is, and you can probably register the whole month. So actually the Hacktoberfest started from the 1st of October, but you can register today, or even in the next week, or even in the week after that. probably you won't get the goodies, but you'll get a great experience. It's a great learning experience. I actually started my journey into open source from Hacktoberfest. So yeah, it is definitely a great learning experience, and I do encourage each one of y'all to just contribute to, or participate in the Hacktoberfest and contribute to repositories and projects.
Also, Hacktoberfest will be a great opportunity to work on stuff, but you should not cheat your way around it, and take the experience in the way that it benefits you. Because last time many of them went around the rules, and actually one of my friends did a thing where he made 4 pull requests to his own repository, and in the end he was able to be called successful in the Hacktoberfest. So this year the rules have become stricter, but people have found workarounds like that. But in the end, these workarounds do not matter. What matters is the effort that you put in the project.
So there's a question from Rajvi. She's saying that she made an account for Hacktoberfest, but she doesn't know where to find all the available open source projects. So how would you go about that? What kind of projects would be good for a first timer?
Okay, so I would not mind answering that. So basically, well, as I said, there is a tag attached to the Hacktoberfest issues, or a repository, can, attach a tag. I'm not really sure if it is a tag for the repository, but for the issues, yes, it is definitely a tag. You have this tag called Hacktoberfest. Like you have a good first issue tag, you have a Hacktoberfest issue tag, and you could just start searching repositories in that way. Because if you type in the GitHub search menu, I guess, yeah, search menu, that if you want to solve Hacktoberfest issues, it will give you the appropriate results. Or you could just Google search them, because I do understand the GitHub search doesn't really work exceptionally well. So you could just Google search it as well, good repositories to contribute for Hacktoberfest or something. Because yeah, until
Yeah,
you find
actually,
it, yeah.
in GitHub search it actually works, because just now I searched Hacktoberfest and there are around 50,000 issues. Most of them may be old, but some may be newer, I guess, around 100 or 2,000. But they'll clearly mention Hacktoberfest 2020. So make sure you search for those issues. So a simple search on GitHub will help.
I'd just like to add here, matlab, so the Hacktoberfest website, if you go into the resources section and then if you scroll down to beginners, there's a specific sort of list of resources where you can look for issues. So there are websites like issuehub.io. There are different websites, firsttimersonly.com, there's goodfirstissues.com. So I'll just paste the link in the chat, so I think you can look it up over there as well. Uh, yep. So there's another question. What language did you guys write your respective projects in? Were there any prerequisites language-wise?
Jugal, would you like to start with that, or?
Yeah. So the tool that I worked on, the checker framework, was actually wholly written in Java, and it was meant for Java. So they had just one tag in their ideas list or their page on Google Summer of Code. So I just searched whatever relevant technology that I knew, and checker framework was one of the first ones that appeared because of Java. So I had to write code in Java. But some other organizations, like I tried working with Amahi. So Amahi had multiple projects, and one of the project was enhancing their Android app, enhancing their iOS app. So Swift and Java were the languages, and also they wanted to enhance their file system. So Amahi had their file system project in Golang. So If you just search the language, you'll be able to see whatever tags or whatever frameworks or whatever languages that the organization work on. So if you search something like JavaScript, Mozilla Foundation will come up, because Mozilla has a lot of projects related to web development. And some other examples will be, if you search for C++, there will be Boost. Boost is actually very difficult to crack because they have very strict requirements. But yeah, you can always try. There was a note-taking application called Joplin, and it was fairly easy. It was in JavaScript, and yeah, you can just search according to the tags. Like you can search according to cybersecurity or web development or app development or something like that, or you can search according to the language.
So, well, my project was in Python, and there are a lot of projects in Python as well. Like there are many for Java, there are many for JavaScript, there are many for Python as well. So, well, my project was, completely in Python, and for prerequisites, what I would say is that I am a fairly experienced or intermediate to advanced level Python coder. So basically, you should know the ins and outs of the programming language, how you can uh, work with the existing code. But it is not necessary for you to know each and every library or each and everything that they have or the main repository has used, because that is nearly impossible. Like my repository, like the project that I was contributing to, they had around 15 to 20,000 lines of code. Even though it is in Python, it is very difficult for any of us, even for in a month, to go through all of that and understand everything. So what I would suggest is that know the basics of whatever you're contributing to. So like Jugal said that he did a Java project, so maybe he knew the basics of Java before he started contributing to his project. Similarly, my project was based in Python, so you should know the basics of Python, and and how to work with Python, probably, and then you can start contributing to that. Also, for my GSoC experience, I can completely say this, that I was probably learning something or the other new every single day. So because I was working with libraries I hadn't even heard about, and I didn't even know that they exist. So even if if you have an idea of 30 to 40 or 50% of what you're supposed to do while writing the proposal, after writing the proposal, I feel that you should be good enough to contribute to that project, or be selected in it. So that is not really an issue.
Also, you need not be any expert in whatever the things that you'd have to do in your project, because they expect that they don't expect you to know everything. Like they clearly have their guide, and if you follow their guide, you'll be fairly be able to understand what is actually going on in the code. So do not fret about those things.
Okay, anyone else has any questions for us? We have 5-10 minutes more, around 5 to 10 minutes more. So anyone, if they have any questions, please come forward and to ask them.
Okay, so you don't have any questions, because yeah, this is more important.
Yeah, exactly. Well, like you can obviously, if you all are not comfortable asking your questions to us here, you can.
Yeah.
We have mentioned our LinkedIn accounts and all of that in the posters. You all can contact us there as well. If you ask them, everyone will get to know about the answer. That's all. Now to take up an issue. Jugal, would you be answering that?
Actually, for this question, is it fine if one of you sort of share your screen and actually show कि अच्छा ये GitHub पे, maybe the repo that you worked on or something like that. कोई भी ऐसे repo, if you could go through it like manually.
Yeah, I'll do it. Okay. Okay, so I'll start sharing. Is the
Just
screen
for the sake
visible?
of just for the sake of posterity, the question is that could you talk about how to take up an issue on GitHub, how to solve it, and do you need to ask the contributor to assign it to you, or what exactly the procedure is? Yeah.
Okay. So on the part of assigning, actually, the person will only be able to assign you an issue if you're part of the organization. So assigning the issue is not quite important. But currently, I know one repository like. Okay, 1 minute. I'll just go to checker framework. Yeah. So this is the repository, and if you go to issues, the issue will have all these kinds of labels. So most of the organizations have labels like help wanted. So my organization had a help wanted label, and if you choose that label, so yeah, this is one issue, and yeah, one person has replied that they think they know something, and so the kind of labels that you'd have to watch out for are help wanted or good first issue or good for beginner. So the so Michael is the part of the organization, but uh, this person is not a part of the organization, and he was not assigned the issue. So assignment should not be a problem, but you should look out for these issues. One more thing that you can say is there's a repository called. Yeah. So label. These are different labels. Often the easy ones will always be good first issue and help wanted. So these were the issues on this repository. So the only thing that you need to look out for is these labels, and you can have a conversation on this issue as well, but make sure that you do not lurk. Again, I'm saying this because what happened during my time was a person did not look at the guide, and he started asking questions like, what should I do, how should I do it? So the mentor straight away said, if you are not adept enough to look at the guide, you won't be participating in for this year, for this organization or this project. So he straight away said, please don't participate. So if you're confident enough, go ahead and use the chat, but make sure that you don't lurk. Yeah. So do you have any points to add?
So basically, I have nothing to add, because you basically showed how to go through the issues, how to find issues. So I would just like to add something to that mentor point that you just mentioned. So mentors are actually professionals who are working in the field, or they are maintainers of a repository. So they are doing this work for free. They're taking out time out of their schedule, and they are helping students like us work on these projects. So you have to respect their time, and they do not expect you to know everything, but they expect you to do your homework, or do some basic things before you start asking them questions on what to do. So if you ask them, as Jagal rightly said, that if you ask them questions on what is already mentioned in the getting started guide, they will obviously feel that this person has not even read anything, so how will he be able to contribute, or why should we allow him to contribute? So always do your research first, go through a lot of stuff, and then it would be better if you could present an idea that this is something that we could do, rather than just straight away asking questions. Okay.
Okay. So if two people work on the same issue, the
Jugal,
solution
Jugal,
of
Jugal.
one.
Yatharth has actually asked a follow-up questions. So,
Okay.
so yeah, okay. Aryan, you have answered that. Okay, okay. Fine, fine. Sorry, sorry. You can just go forward with Adnan's question.
Okay. So Adnan asked if two people work on the same issue and solution of one is accepted. Yeah. So actually, there will be like many people will try to get their hands on to solve the issue, but of course the mentors will take time and review each of your work. Like in my case, some of the people were trying to solve the issue, but the mentor first went through the code that they've written and provided feedback. If you are able to follow or add finish to your work according to the feedback in time, your pull request will be merged, and the other person who was a little late will not be able to do the same. But make sure that you choose your battle. Make sure that you choose proper issue that have the probability of less people trying it out, and the faster you try it out, the better. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, well, you have pretty much said that is everything that is to be in a server. So yeah, nothing for myself.
Okay. So yes, Harth is asking while submitting PR, a
I
way
guess
to link to.
Aryan has already answered that in both the
Okay.
comments, so that is good. Okay. Uh, anyone else has any questions for us? We'll be ending the Q&A session really soon. Last one or two questions, if anyone has them.
Even if you have any general questions, I mean, these guys are just your seniors, so
So doesn't really
they'll be
matter.
able to answer just general queries as well. So feel free to ask anything under the sun.
Yeah, but this meeting is recorded, so just make sure of that before asking any questions.
Okay, I think we don't really have any other questions. So just to close it off, thank you, Amogh. Thank you, Jugal, for taking
Thank you.
time out and
Yeah. Yeah.
conducting this
Thank you for
session.
having us.
Yep. So tomorrow we'll be having another one again. Soham and Rahul. They'll be discussing different things. They aren't going to be sort of overlaps or anything like that. So don't worry about that. So do join tomorrow as well. And yep, see you tomorrow.
Also, if you're on Microsoft Teams or you have a team account, you can just click on our profile and add a message if you don't
Yeah.
want to ask a doubt right now, or you don't remember something. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can always reach out on LinkedIn,
Yep.
or you can put the doubts on the WhatsApp group.
If
That we
anything
have.
works, like we are there to help you out with your doubts. That is
Yeah.
the important point here. Okay.
And
Okay.
try to tell your friends if you liked today's session, then try to tell them to join tomorrow as well. Because it's just general and anybody can join. I mean, I know there's people from EXTC here. There are different people from different branches as well. So yeah, I don't think like a branch should be an issue. So yep.